Hi, good afternoon, everyone. It is top of the hour. My name is Anthea Martin. I'm chair of the State Housing Board. I'm going to go ahead and kick off the meeting today. And we are starting. I don't have my agenda pulled up in front of me. My computer is lagging, but I believe we are starting with Andrew or Allison as my guest.
Yep, I think Allison's going to do the introduction today.
Great.
I
Call
am.
the meeting to order and turn it over to Allison.
Absolutely. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you, Anthea. So the big news is there was a press conference yesterday, and that press conference was focused on the strategic growth of the state of Colorado. And of course, that includes housing. And so the governor had a press conference and executed an executive order in order to really have the state lead, as he put it, lead in the efforts to streamline housing. And so as we look to and we ask for things to be done quicker at the local level, the governor said, you know what, let's take a step back. Let's lead at the state level. And so the executive order has many departments within the state look at what impact does their work and their programs have on housing. Do they delay the impact of housing? Do they promote and streamline the impacts for housing? And so as the housing agency within the executive department, DOH actually has a list of things as well. And so within that executive order, DOH is directed to do many things. The exciting part is we're well on the path to doing these things. That said, the timelines are going to be a little bit quicker, which I think is exciting for everyone. We are assessing right now how we will pivot to move some of the things that we've been working toward more quickly. And so we're in the process right now of assessing that. We will have an email newsletter out later this week. And in that email newsletter, we plan to include more of what that future plan is and kind of the timing associated with that. We have communicated broadly about our application holiday. And with that application holiday, we will not accept applications in September and October. We plan to use that time to really assess our guidelines and several of the things that are highlighted within that executive order. So the timing of that is really good. Additionally, when we look at the execution of contracts and expediting those, in the first 6 months, we have the goal of executing contracts within 120 days by December 31st of 2023. And so that is from the handoff date to the execution date. And so that would be 120 days by then. That's cutting the time in half from where we are right now. And then by June 30th, we have the directive to do that within 90 days. And so we are looking at what those processes are. A key to that is really having an updated template that we work on together with our stakeholders, with legal teams, both at OSC and the Attorney General's office and the Division of Housing, to be able to expedite the processes and meet those timelines and those directives that we have. So we're really excited because with an executive order, what happens is we get the additional attention that we need in order to put these things in place. The attention that we may not have had, but for that heightened expectation from the governor's office and the governor. So exciting things to come. There will be more detailed that's shared in our email newsletter later this week. And I don't know, I think Rick might be on the line, Rick Garcia. And if Rick, you wanted to add something, I'd love to welcome you. to do that. Or maybe not, and that's fine. But I'm happy to answer any questions that I can. A lot of these things are in process, and what we're doing is looking at how we can expedite those things. James?
Thank you for that update, Allison. Different topic. The mayor of Denver homelessness emergency. How's that going to work with funding?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, that's a great question. We are in regular communication with the city of Denver, city and county of Denver. That said, they have put in an application for our navigation campuses that the Office of Homeless Initiatives had put out, and so we are considering funding for that. And as a component of that, there are also the possibility of vouchers. And so we are looking at the possibility of partnering navigation campus funds together with voucher funds. And Kristen looks like she really wants to add, and I would love for Kristen to jump in and add what she would like.
If that's okay. No, you are absolutely right, Allison. I just wanted to share other exciting ways that we are looking to support Denver. So I'm Kristen Toombs, Director of the Office of Homeless Initiatives within the Division of Housing. And we did an analysis, and we are also looking at all of the different existing resources that we've awarded or are in operations over the past 3 years, not just to the city and county of Denver, but to many of the partners in the community. So think of the nonprofits or the affordable housing developers. So really working with our partners, not just, again, the city and the county and the continuum of care and the other partners, look at what are the existing units, vouchers, services, programs that have funding from us or are about to, that's in the pipeline, and how can we coordinate those efforts? We're also making sure that we continue the intentional efforts that those already had in place. So what do I mean by that? If we had a supportive housing project that's about to open up, can some of those units be utilized to help with the Mayor Johnston's goal of housing 1,000 people? At the same time, we also want to make sure that we know that there are people experiencing homelessness in the metro area, and some of those would be eligible for that housing. So we want to make sure we don't create unintended consequences of hurting some folks depending on where they're residing as they're surviving without housing. So we're working very closely with the Metro Denver Homeless Initiative Continuum of Care, working very closely with the local governments just to see, again, where do we have existing partners with existing state resources, and how can we coordinate those efforts to support the great work that Denver is doing, but also support the great work that's happening in the other regions as well, or communities as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the board? Allison, did you have something else to add?
I think that is it. So exciting things to come, and we will keep you all informed. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Kristen, I believe we're turning it over to you for the transformational homelessness response to the grant program NOFA.
Thank you, Anthea. So I'm actually excited. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Nellie Stagg, who is our transformational homelessness response manager. I believe you got to hear from Nellie last month. Very excited at the team she's been building here to manage this important program. And we are very excited to be able to bring to you our recommendations for the second round of this important NOFA. So I'll turn it over to Nellie, but we are both here to answer any questions so the board members can make an informed decision. But very excited for Nellie to share on where we are.
Thank you, Kristen. Good afternoon, everybody. Nellie Stagg, she, her, hers. As Kristen mentioned, I'm the Transformational Homelessness Response Manager here at the Office of Homeless Initiatives. And this is a very exciting day for our team. It has been many months in the making, and we are excited to connect with you all about these funding recommendations. So starting with a recap, just for folks who may be joining or remembering as well, the Transformational Homelessness Response Grant Program, or as we affectionately are calling it, The THOR is the acronym, the THOR grant program. That NOFA is really to support homelessness services. So the eligible program models and activities under that NOFA are things like street outreach, emergency shelter, transitional housing, bridge housing, as well as prevention efforts like eviction and homelessness prevention, rapid rehousing, as well as supportive housing and the services for that. We're also looking at systems improvement. So how can we strengthen the continuums of folks working to address homelessness in our communities? How can we get stronger, better data? Can we really improve the systems that we have at place as well? So those are the allowable activities under this NOFA. And recapping, if y'all remember from the first round of applications for the February 15th deadline, the Division of Housing received over 77 applications requesting over $212 million in funding. To date, the State Housing Board has already approved $35.7 million to 33 THOR awards. We had a second round in this NOFA, and those applications were due June 15th. And the Division of Housing received another 32 applications requesting over $49 million in funding. So next slide, thank you. So what was our review process? For the THOR grant program, each application was reviewed and scored by 2 reviewers, really based on the criteria that was outlined in the NOFA. You can see all of that core criteria listed here, the kinds of things we were looking for. Is their program design informed by lived experience? Does the agency requesting this funding really have the capacity and the expertise to lead in the community and implement this work? What are their safety and security plannings? And throughout all of this work, really wanting to confirm eligibility and accuracy of that requested activity. So we kept going back to our North Star, which is DOH's program model comparison guideline. So if an application is requesting street outreach, are they meeting our threshold for what are best practices in implementing street outreach? Can we really see that clearly demonstrated in the application itself? Throughout this, we were also reviewing their budgets with great thoroughness, looking for reasonableness in the activities listed, as well as allowability within this NOFA and the SLURF funding that this is sourced from. And then throughout this, our review committee was really considering geographic distribution. How can we ensure that these grants are having a transformational impact in the entire state of Colorado? And how can we prevent duplication of efforts? How can we really ensure that we're maximizing these resources? Some of these applications that we're presenting to you all and that we reviewed were applications that requested both THOR funding as well as TAG funding. So these were applications seeking, acquisition, rehabilitation, construction, as well as from THOR, the ongoing services for those facilities. So for those applications, funding recommendations have been made in partnership between OHI and OFIS. Our staff work really closely together in this review process, both considering the program alignment within the THOR NOFA, as well as that financial viability. Is their plan, is their capital stack, is all of that really adding up, and do we foresee success for these projects? And then another bucket of applications we reviewed were our prevention applications. So our rapid rehousing requests, our homelessness eviction prevention requests. We reviewed over $75 million in requests for these types of activities. And in this, our staff was really strategic in prioritizing applications that are seeking to provide services that we know future grant programs may not be able to cover. How can we really dovetail nicely this, once in a lifetime THOR funding for the next 3 years with opportunities and funding activities that we know might be harder for other funding categories to cover for prevention services. And then deeply as well to maximize the impact and accessibility of these prevention resources to Coloradans across the state. Priority was given to projects that served statewide or larger regional focus areas instead of to a specific municipality or county. Wanting to make sure if there's a home that really needs some prevention resources, where they're falling across the county line isn't the deciding factor of whether or not they're able to access those services. How can we strengthen the entire state and ensure all Coloradans have access to these resources? So with that, in total, for this second round and final round of THOR funding, we were considering over $300 million in requests for funding. This included those new THOR applications that were received on June 15th, deferred projects from that first round, that February 15th deadline for the THOR NOFA, as well as the 15 remaining homelessness-focused TAG applications. So of that $304 million, we're considering about $100 million in requests for the TAG NOFA there as well. And I'm excited to share and discuss with you all the Division of Housing staff's recommendations the State Housing Board approved the following 26 applications for a total of $47,602,059 in Thor awards, as well as share that OHI's staff concurs with OPUS's staff's recommendation of an additional $16.7 million for the 5 proposed TAG awards to be voted on throughout the remainder of this meeting. So I know that the memo we have also includes this information. We provided a few other details, just trying to get ahead of some questions that might come up. There are 3 kind of buckets of applications that we presented to you all with our funding recommendations. This first bucket here are those grant applications that we received for the June 15th deadline. These are those round 2 applications that came through. And you'll note here on the right-hand side, there are a couple different columns at play. Our staff worked really intentionally to maximize the amount of funding across House Bill 2022-1377 and 2022-1304 funds. 1304 and 1377 funded both of these NOFAs, and we worked really thoughtfully to ensure that all of the activities within these applications are allowable under those pools of funding. So you're going to see some braided and blended funding for some of these grant opportunities. That final column on the right is the total amount funding recommendation that we're making for these programs across both of those streams of funding. So in total for this, for the June applications that we received, requesting the State Housing Board's vote on $20,341,765 of programming for services. This next pool that we have here, these are the February applications that we received. So our team really deferred all of the prevention services requests that we received in February, wanted to see the full pool, recognizing that some communities, some smaller communities, might need to wait a little bit longer to submit an application for that June deadline, and wanting really to get stock of the the whole field of what's happening with prevention. A lot of things were in the works. So a lot of the applications that you see here listed for the February applications that we are recommending for approval are serving in those prevention activities. So rapid rehousing, eviction and homelessness prevention, and therefore more of that funding recommendation is coming from that 1304 column. But in total, we are recommending over $19 million in awards from those February applications that we received. And the final bit of your memo, and I added in some additional details to this slide, just wanted to make it really clear for y'all. We are also recommending Thor funding for 5 projects that have requested funding across TAG and Thor. So in total, these projects, DOH's recommendations is over $24 million. But what we are really asking the State Housing Board to vote on in this part of the meeting is specifically the services funding for these programs. You can see that highlighted here in green, the Thor recommendations, $8.2 million in funding recommendations for these services grants. So I see we have a question here, or before that, Kristen, anything else that you would recommend that I can share? Any other points?
I would just punctuate again, any of the TAG recommendations will be coming forward. You saw in the agenda, there are pro cons, as we normally do for development projects, that the Office of Housing, Finance and Sustainability staff will be going over. And so we did include that here so that you could have a full sense for the total Division of Housing support to some of those projects, what that total amount would look like. We are specifically talking about, again, here, the request on the OHI side, the OFIS side, you will get to in a little bit. But otherwise, I think that was great. Thank you, Nellie.
Thanks, Kristen. Would open it up to questions from the board.
Nancy?
Yep, thank you. I think, first of all, I just want to say this is really exciting. We have so many really excellent organizations that will be able to utilize these funds and help some folks with the kind of shelter that they might need. I'll reserve some comments for other things later, but I did want to note that I am on the board of Bridge House. I'm on the Aurora board, and this is for the Englewood facility that is new. But I just wanted to check, so when voting comes around, whether I would have to recuse myself. So That's the question.
Okay, Nancy, thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Sure.
I think it really comes down to you and your level of comfort. If you feel like there's a conflict of interest there with you being on the board, then feel free to recuse yourself.
Well, I noted that Melissa Green, who's the CEO of the organization's on this call. So I don't know. I think it'd probably be most appropriate for me to recuse myself.
Okay.
I think it's a
So
great project.
we can separate that from the rest, if that makes sense, and do a different series of voting levels here. And Nellie, I think you had two asks of us. One was for the $24 million funding recommendation, and then also the THR recommendation of 8.2.
It's one ask, and whoever's running the slide, I'm not sure if that's Laura. If you could go back about 3 slides, it has the one more for me. There you go. Perfect, thank you. So our ask is that the State Housing Board votes on the 26 applications for the Thor funding, which totals $47.6 million in Thor
Okay.
awards. Yep.
Thanks for clarifying that. And I appreciate you going through, everything that you all the parameters that you use to screen these applications. I'm curious, in a perfect world, you don't have to answer this now, but how much more funding would you need to fund all of the projects that are out there? I mean, is it double? Are we getting close? What is your sense there?
I can start, but Nellie or Allison, feel free to jump in. Anthea, I love that question. This is an unprecedented amount of resources and is going to be transformational without question. And two things for us to remember with these funds is it is still not enough, and it is short term. It is not ongoing. And so one of the things we are looking at is how do we incorporate what we're learning from here, what we're funding. Some of this is one-time funds, right? That they won't need, there won't be a cliff once it goes. So some of the asks were intentional keeping that in mind, and that will get us so far. And some of those things are absolutely exciting and worthwhile. Some of the projects, many of the projects will need to be looking for, and part of what we're charging them with is how do they adjust operations or continue to have resources into the future. We are coordinating around looking at what we award here and what Proposition 123 and other resources can fund into the future. Also, some of what we're looking at is the hopes that maybe we won't need as much in street outreach and shelter as we move more and more people into housing or have more and more prevention. So part of the systems improvement piece will enable us to have that real-time data and be able to be dynamic to see where we need to be investing in 2 to 3 years from now. What impacts will these have in those different parts of the homelessness continuum, and see where we interject. For example, if you remember with the emergency rental assistance program, we've been doing hundreds of millions of dollars to help households, and that still wasn't reaching the prevention level for everyone who needed it. And you'll see here that we're doing about $30 million in prevention. So it's not going to reach the full need, but it absolutely will have a full impact, a huge impact. One of the reasons I'm not giving you a solid answer is because it is really complicated to know we need X amount in prevention. That'll solve prevention. It's a very dynamic,
Sure.
Housing status is very dynamic. Life is just messy, right? And so it's constantly changing. So that's why, again, we have put resources towards supporting our continuum of cares around more real-time data, so we can have our finger on the pulse more accurately. The other thing that we're funding with some of the 1377 funds is a landscape analysis. We are going to be working with APT Associates in conjunction with the governor's office to do a landscape analysis, to really be able to dig into seeing what else are we still missing? Where is that gap? How can we pull from local government's great work, as Nancy was mentioning, all the great work that Arapahoe County is doing, for example, and many other counties and cities. How does that fit in partnership with the city, the state's resources and federal resources? So we will have more in about a year from that landscape analysis that will give us a better understanding of the impact of any resources, including these, as well as where we still have some need.
That's great. And please keep us updated on the results of that landscape analysis.
Absolutely. Very excited about it.
Any questions, any other questions from the board? Can I ask that we go back to that slide, please? Thank you. If I can request approval for the 26 applications for a total of $47.6 million for the THR awards. We will do one with Bridge House and one round of voting without it. Or maybe we can just record Nancy's vote, not including Bridge House. Can we do that? Specify that she recuses from Bridge House and just do one voting round. That should be okay. I hope so. Speak now, forever hold the peace. Can we get a motion, please?
So moved. This is Candace.
Thanks, Candace.
I second.
Thanks, James. All those in favor signify by aye.
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 Any opposed? Great. So Nancy's vote is for 25 applications and the rest of ours is for the 26. I believe you have what you need. Hopefully that wasn't too sloppy. Thanks for that. Thanks, Kristen and Nellie. All right, moving on to the application review stage. First up is the Irving at Mile High. And I have to recuse myself from Irving at Mile High, but look forward to hearing the presentation led by Wayne McClary.
Okay, so for Irving Mile High, we have Aaron Miracle from ULC and Sarah Bach assisting.
Do I talk first? Hello? Hello?
Aaron,
Yeah,
we can't really hear you.
you can't hear me?
Just turn the volume up or speak up a bit, Aaron.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Better.
Better, but not good. Still not a problem? Great.
Fantastic.
Okay, well, first, I just want to acknowledge, I've been working on affordable housing for over 25 years here in Colorado. And I just want to acknowledge how amazing it is to have the resources that we now have and thank all of you for making this happen. I agree, there's still more resources to bring, but I remember 20 plus years ago fighting just to keep the line item open for the Division of Housing. I don't know if anyone else is on that call remembers it, but we wrote checks to keep the line item open. So I just want to kind of acknowledge like where we are a generation later is amazing and thank all of you. So yeah. Okay. So the Irving's really the last phase of our master site redevelopment here. And this is on the West Colfax corridor. Just to give you an idea, this community has been really in a state of what we would say displacement. We look at the Irving as an opportunity to do really an in-placement. This is really to serve folks of the community who are otherwise getting forced out because of the high cost of rental housing. And again, ULC, we had land banked, we had gone down different roads for what this should be, but we came to a realization a year and a half ago that we had to do affordable rental housing here. And we really needed to address that growing displacement happening in the community. So it's a site we've owned for a decade plus. We have an amazing library, that the Corky Gonzalez Library that opened up some years ago. And then the first phase was a Del Norte partnership doing the Avondale Apartments. And so this is the final phase. What's cool about it is we're going up high, using certainly our zoning, going 7 stories, a steel frame. So it is a bit more expensive, but we felt like we needed to go higher, take advantage of that and get more homes. The other beauty is, I would say beauty, is that we're really serving extremely low income households. So we have 5 units that are dedicated to households at 20% AMI. We are doing income averaging. That's how we support the very low. So we got the 5 at 20. And then we have another, I think about 20 at 30% AMI. So 25 units targeted for 20 and 30% AMI. We know this can be done. We've seen other folks. We partnered on a site in North Denver where income averaging was done. but they didn't get down to 20. And this was something we felt like we had to do. And so, again, I think that that's a part of why we are the sponsor rather than kind of the role we a lot of times play is where we're do the ground lease and we do a land trust. Here, we felt like we really needed to push this and push the affordability, really get to a deeper, lower serving AMI. Sarah, jump in if you want to add pieces, but I just kind of give a quick overview. What else should I touch on?
I think that's great. I think that those are really key pieces of the Irving. And I think we don't have a ton of time, so maybe we'll just open it up for questions, Aaron, unless you have more.
Just maybe to draw attention to kind of, there's a massive redevelopment in the future with the Westridge Apartments, which is owned by DHA. So there's going to be a lot of folks needing housing. So that's another component. I think the timing here allows us to be in a situation where when DHA does start that, folks could be moving here as well, which is they're only about 3 blocks away. And again, just to give you an idea of the change in the last decade, households kind of cost burden, that's gone up to, we basically have, 56% of the renter households are cost burdened in this community. 10 years ago, it was 10% less. So again, we talk about the challenges of this community. This is definitely a neighborhood that's really changing. And we've been in this neighborhood for over a decade. We really see the importance of doing this Avondale and doing the Irving at Mile High Vista. So.
Great. Thank you, Aaron and Sarah. Any questions from the board on the Irving at Mile High? You have a question, Aaron?
I just want to add something that's also a value of ours. Sorry. So we've been working with a BIPOC architecture firm, Studio Completiva. That's another value. I just want to reiterate. Studio Completiva is already in this community. They're actually next door in the Del Norte development that they were the architect on. And so just want to reiterate, like that's a value principle that we think is really important, is having a BIPOC architectural firm be a partner in doing this. And they know this community because they've been here for a long time as well.
Thanks for that, Aaron. Okay, hearing no questions, then we'll move on to the next application. Thank you both. Next up is the response shelter tag. I'm presenting with Pamela Gibson.
Yes, thank you. I'm pleased to present Shannon Meyer with response.
Hi, thank you. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Thanks. My name is Shannon Meyer. I'm Executive Director of Response. Response has been serving survivors of domestic violence in the Roaring Fork Valley for 40 years now. You may not know that 1 in 3 women and 1 in 5 men will experience some form of domestic abuse from an intimate partner at some point during their lifetime, and our community is no different. We typically serve between 160 and 200 survivors per year, and that number has increased about 20% since the start of the pandemic and has not gone down. Fear of losing safe and affordable housing is one of the primary reasons that a survivor won't leave their abusive home. And domestic violence is one of the #1 causes of homelessness in women and children's lives. Response has never had a permanent shelter for domestic violence victims before now. In the early days of our program back in the 80s, volunteers would shelter victims in their own homes, but that wasn't a viable model and it ended in the early 90s. For a long time, all we were able to provide for victims was 3 nights of emergency shelter for those in imminent danger from their abuser, and they could stay in local hotels that donated that to us. But this wasn't even a band-aid for survivors who would end up having to go back to their abuser in most cases if they didn't have family or friends they could move in with. For that reason, in 2019, we started our Housing for Survivors program with our largest ever federal grant matched by our largest ever private grant from the Diane and Bruce Hawley Foundation. Rather than going right into building a shelter at that point, we decided we wanted to test the demands and grow our skills around housing first. So we piloted a short-term housing model that used what we call master leases. So apartments that we would rent, Response would rent around the valley that could provide confidential short-term shelter for up to 3 months. We coupled this with a rapid rehousing program, which provides flexible rental assistance for up to a year to help survivors exiting shelter to find financial and housing independence. We soon saw that the demand was even higher than we'd expected, and we were struggling to find and keep rental apartments. Last year, Response housed 17 survivors and 17 children in our 3 transitional units. But tragically, we also had to turn away 15 survivors because of lack of availability when they needed help. When a survivor is on a waiting list for shelter, they're not staying someplace nice. They're typically staying with their abusive partner until they have a safe place to escape to, which is heartbreaking, and which is why we decided last summer to finally pursue the creation of a permanent shelter for domestic violence victims in our community. Our project, the Holly Center for Hope and Healing, will have 24 beds in 7 efficiency units and be able to house at capacity 9 adults and 15 children. It will also contain our office, which will allow us to better serve clients both in shelter and in the community. Public-facing shelters, such as this one, has actually been found to be much safer than many of the older confidential models. Our building has been designed to be both extremely secure while at the same time being trauma-informed. The community and law enforcement will know the location and help us to keep it safe, and having a caretaker unit on site will provide an extra layer of comfort for our residents. This grant from the Division of Housing is the last step in making this shelter a reality for our community. We've raised the remainder of the funding that we need to meet our $7.5 million budget. We've received full approval from the town of Basalt for our building plans and have submitted our permit applications. Our construction team anticipates that with permits, we'll be ready to break ground in early October, and they hope for a 12-month construction window so that we'll be able to open the doors of the shelter in the fall of 2024. Not a moment too soon for survivors in our community. With your vote today, survivors in the Roaring Fork Valley will have a safe place to escape abuse and a strong partnership with the staff of Response as we get them back on their feet and into independent living situations. Now, if you have any questions for me.
Thank you, Shannon. What a fantastic, fantastic proposed development. And I just want to give a big shout out to Diane and Bruce Hale for contributing $2.3 million to the stack here. Phenomenal. You said 9 adults and 15 children is the requirement that the adults have children to be admitted?
No, we have, of the 7 efficiency rooms that we have 5 that are family units that can fit 1 survivor and up to 3 children. And then we have 2 single survivor suites, which ideally would just have 1 survivor in them. But if we're at capacity, we'll have beds for 2 single survivors. And then if we have a larger family and we don't have the single rooms full, they're actually designed so that they're lockouts. And so those single rooms can get added onto one or another of the family suites for a larger family or a family that has teenagers, for instance. So no, people do not have to have children to stay in the shelter.
That's great. And I love the model with the individual efficiency units. How will you be fundraising for the services going forward?
So we will be looking at probably only an increase of about $30,000 a year in operations around the shelter portion. Right now, as it says in the memo, we rent the 3 apartments and it costs us about $70,000 a year to do that. It's not a very financially efficient model. So once we have the shelter in place, we will no longer be renting those apartments. That money will go towards shelter operations, which we anticipate to be about $100,000 a year. You know, this organization, as I said, has been around for 40 years and we have had a lot of fundraising success in our community for operations going forward. A capital campaign such as this really makes a big splash in our community and has brought a lot of new donors to our organization who I believe are very committed to helping us move forward with this shelter and continuing to fund us, not just with a capital contribution, but with operations going forward.
Great. Thank you. Nancy?
Thank you. I too think that this is a great project, and I appreciate. Years and years and years ago, I volunteered at a shelter, and I know how incredibly important it is for women all across the board. I just wanted to mention that this is one of the few reasons why I think temporary housing, shelter, if you will, is really a useful thing. I may comment later on other kinds of temporary shelter because it often doesn't lead to permanent housing, and we're kind of just delaying the cycle. So I really appreciate this project, and I hope that amongst other things that you do, providing counseling, et cetera, is helping them find suitable housing for when they leave the shelter, because that is a very tricky and difficult issue. So thank you.
Nancy, I'll just jump onto that really quickly to say that we do, with our housing program, have a housing program manager, and she does intensive case management with all of our survivors in the program. So those that stay in our master lease apartments now work with her once a week on filling out housing applications, talking to landlords, even working on credit repair. She does a lot of financial management training. And that will be even easier for her to do with people staying in the shelter. And then we have our rapid rehousing program, which gives up to a year of flexible funding assistance, because sometimes really what someone needs is the first and last month rent, because their credit is destroyed by their abuser, so they don't have the money to get into a place, and we can help them with that and really meet their needs for up to a year in that regard.
Sounds perfect. Thank you. Thanks for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is the Fort Collins Rescue Mission tag, presented by Natalie Wolf.
Thanks, Anthea. I'm pleased to introduce Seth Forwood with the Denver Rescue Mission.
Yes, thank you. So we are proposing for a new expanded shelter in Fort Collins. We have been operating men's shelter in Fort Collins for over 10 years. And we inherited a building that was operated as a shelter that has never worked well as emergency shelter for the population, but we've made it work. And several years ago, the city of Fort Collins convened a homelessness advisory committee to identify the highest needs in our community in regards to homelessness. What they identified as the top greatest need was 24/7 shelter for men experiencing homelessness. And so based off of those findings, we then started the process of developing plans for this new shelter that could adequately meet those needs. Every winter we do expanded sheltering in a seasonal overflow shelter, and it's not an efficient process. It doesn't provide the safety and security and stability for the guests that we serve. And working with Shopworks Architecture, who specialized in trauma-informed design, they are very intentional and careful about designing this shelter to be a temporary solution for people that gets them out of inclement weather. It provides that security where they don't have to think about where they're going to be from night to night. And that opens up new opportunities for them as far as work and moving into a permanent place where they can stay. We're under no delusions that shelter is de facto housing. I think it works poorly for that. We identified this shelter as the first step on the housing first solution. And so the north wing will be the 24/7 shelter accommodations with a couple of different levels of accommodations for those looking to engage even more fully with case management, with housing navigation. And then on the south wing, there will be a day center area where we can provide food. We have offices that will increase our partnership in the community to provide housing navigation, case management, mental health resources, and behavioral health resources, even perhaps a pop-up clinic for some medical attention that can be done in shelter. We found that the least amount of barriers that we can have for housing navigation, the more likely it is for somebody to exit homelessness and go into their permanent stable house. And so offering services within an emergency shelter is a really important way to limit the barriers for those experiencing homelessness to get into permanent housing. We'll have about 200 beds right now. Our current facility has 89 beds, and that includes temporary mats that we put on the cafeteria floor in order to create more capacity for those coming to seek our services. To give you an idea of the delta that we experience right now, even in the month of July, where the weather is nice outside, we turned away 50 men from receiving shelter services simply because we didn't have the space for them. And in October, we turned away 245 men before we were able to open our seasonal overflow shelter. So the need is high and the risk is great when we don't have capacity to welcome everyone who's seeking shelter, especially in those winter months. We are hopeful and excited that this expanded shelter can provide that life safety service for the people in our community experiencing homelessness who have nowhere else to go in the winter especially, but also, as I said before, be the first step on the Housing First solution.
Thank you, Seth. Any questions from the board? Love the design. Okay, hearing no questions. Thanks for your presentation. Next up is the Bridge House Ready to Work Englewood tag, and presenting is Wayne McClary.
And for Bridge House Ready to Work Englewood, we have Melissa Green and William Sweeney representing Bridge House.
Hi, thank you, Wayne. I'm Melissa Green, CEO of Bridge House, and with me today, as Wayne has said, is Bill Sweeney. Bill is our Englewood project manager. We're here today to discuss our third facility in Englewood, serving the Tri-Cities. So that's Englewood, Littleton, Sheridan, as well as Arapahoe County and the surrounding communities. We offer a unique work-works model. Our model puts folks back to work in one of our two social enterprises, culinary or landscaping. We add in congregate living and our secret sauce is support services. We believe our model serves the needs of the community by adding a resource that creates a pathway to self-sustainment via employment. Our Ready to Work program is up to a year long. While living in one of our facilities, we work on removing barriers to the exit of homelessness. And some of those barriers that we personally deal with here are legal, addiction, medical, family, circumstantial. We see 3 out of 4 of our participants move into full-time employment, which enables them to sustain their housing. We then follow our graduates for an additional 12 months post-graduation and see a sustained rate of 82% of those folks staying housed and employed. Our Englewood facility will be our third location. We currently have a location in Boulder and one in Aurora. With the additional facility opening in Englewood, we'll see our census for serving the Denver metro area increase to 150 trainees. We also house our interns in our residential navigation process. Interns are those individuals interested in Ready to Work, going through the process of testing the program. So during that time, they meet with our case managers, they go through assessments, see how the house operates, get a feel for the community. They get to ask questions. We're asking them questions, and they're just seeing if it's a good fit for them to be able to sign on for that up to year-long program. During that process, we're really customizing what their program will be while they're with us, working on figuring out exactly which barriers they need help removing. Those who go through our intern process but do not go into the Ready to Work program as a trainee, they'll use a navigational system within our program. Will help them get landed in the right community for them, whether it's a higher level of care for addiction, if they had a community, contact in a different state or someplace else where they already have services connected, we'll help them reconnect with those services. And our Inglewood facility will be a unique addition to our model. So in this facility, we're looking at adding in a navigational portion to the building, which will increase the navigation system for the Tri-Cities, which right now they're working to set. It'll be a 20-bed program seated in our program. So it's kind of unique and cool. We know that we're going to be an added component to the Tri-Cities homeless solutions plan. So we're really excited for that. And for complete transparency, we will be seeking additional funding for that individual program of navigational services. We're so grateful for this time to present with you and to partner with you and to be able to come and share kind of our next big baby here, Inglewood, and answer any questions that you might have for myself or Mr. Sweeney.
Big baby.
Our big baby, we're so excited.
Any questions from the board? Okay, thank you, Melissa. Oh, Nancy has a question.
Sorry. I was just going to mention that this is a really hard area to find housing in. And so this is really exciting for Bridge House. And of course, I'll have to recuse myself from this one.
Thank you for that reminder, Nancy. James?
Yeah, I had a question. I'm just trying to find it. You said that you specialized in two giving opportunities to these individuals. You said landscaping, and what was the other one?
Culinary. So we do have a commercial kitchen here in Boulder where we have a catering company. We have Danconia's brownies. Truffle brownies are amazing. And then within each house, we do have a kitchen to serve the foods for the meals for those that are in the program. And we utilize ServSafe to get them certified so that when they go out to find full-time employment, they can go into any kitchen as a manager.
Okay. And I'm a business owner, and I don't care what unemployment says, right? It's a low unemployment. I'm finding a hard time to finding employees. And in the engineering side, there's opportunities for not just getting a job, but a career, right? And a good paying career. And I would recommend maybe contacting a few organizations that I know of trying to reach out. That's what we're looking for is giving these individuals opportunities for a career and not just seasonal work. I'm not saying that this is. I'm just saying I just don't want to see seasonal work. We need to get these individuals full-time work, and so I would recommend really looking into searching out because again, I don't care what unemployment says. It's hard out there as business owners finding individuals to start a new career in their lives.
And that's just right. We work really hard with all of our trainees to get them to the point where when they go out to find full-time employment, we really are seeing them in a position where it is a career path. It's easy to find a job, either at McDonald's or Walmart or something of the level that there's really no chance to advance and build your career or upskill and really make a life out of a passion that you have when you go back out into the workforce. So we do work with some community partners like KeyHe, Boulder Community Health. There's Aramark that we work with. and we're always looking for other agencies to partner with. So if you want more information on how to couple with us, and we have 2 employment specialists, 1 in each house. We'll have a 3rd one for Inglewood. We're always looking at ways to partner with the community so that we can put our trainees into a strong path for employment.
I appreciate that, Melissa.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Thank you for your time, Melissa.
Thank you.
Next up is the Mountain View Flats, and presenting is Demetra English.
And here today, we with Mountain View Flats, we have James Ginsberg and Zoe LeBeau.
Thanks, Dimitri. James Ginsberg. I'm the Executive Director of Recovery Works, and I'm really happy to be here. Recovery Works was established in 2019, and in 2021, we opened up our Navigation Center and Respite Care in response to Jefferson County's Heading Home Action Plan. I've been really driven by my 25 years of experience working with unhoused individuals and families, 18 with the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless, where I ran various Housing First projects, including the Denver Housing First Collaborative, Native American services, veteran services, transitional housing, permanent housing. And our response was based on the incredible need in Jefferson County. There's not one year-round shelter in the entire county. And so this project was very attractive to us as a key component of our rehousing infrastructure planning and our homeless response system build out. The Mountain View Flats is a really incredible property. It's family owned. It's been owned and operated by 3 generations of the same family over the last 40 years, and there's a lot of pride of ownership. The rooms are in incredible shape. And so we're going to be able to, right after contracting, be able to establish this project of bridge housing immediately and get unsheltered folks immediately off the street into this project. We like bridge housing for a couple of reasons. It's a way to get folks who have identified housing but maybe still have a long process to get into their supportive housing. And so we can stabilize them on the front end, get them immediately into a unit, provide comprehensive services. We're working collaboratively with various agencies in the county. It'll serve the entire region. And so not only does it stabilize people on the front end, but it starts sort of getting folks acclimated to actually being indoors and getting connected with naturally occurring resources in the community, and then we'll transition them into permanent housing. It's also a key component of our expanded navigation center, which will create a continuum of care throughout the whole county. I think what's probably the most impactful is, again, the immediate transition into housing and then the long-term stabilization. And I think I'll leave it at that and see if there's any questions.
Thank you, James. Any questions from the board? James?
Hi, James. It's James.
Hi, James.
I know the property. I used to own my company used to have an office right there, right off of Indiana in 6th Avenue. So I know the property pretty good. I know this is right off, right off of 6th Avenue and then I-70, the property. It's going to be just looking at it, it's going to be tough going because that's not it's right off the highways, right? And so you're going to have a lot of homelessness and people that are. I hope you've thought about that. People coming off the highway and networking, I guess, networking with your residences and hopefully the crime, right? Hopefully you thought about the crime in that neighborhood, but I really think it's a great project. I know the neighborhood, but I hope you've thought about that, because you're doing a great job for the community, and I don't want anything to happen with that in the future.
Yeah, thanks, James. I think that's a good point. And actually, it's uniquely situated where you don't have a lot of walk-up traffic. So folks are sort of protected in that area. And yet it's very walkable to Denver West, to groceries and other amenities. As you know, light rail's pretty close, RTD's very close. And so in many ways, it's uniquely positioned to be protective and sort of both a safe space and an accessible space.
Thank you.
Zoe LeBeau, did you want to add to that? James, did I see somewhere in the application that Rocky Mountain Communities was going to be managing?
Yes.
So this will be a shelter, correct?
No, so thanks for that. We're going to start out as bridge housing so that we can immediately operationalize it. But the long-term goal is for PSH project to convert it to permanent supportive housing.
Okay, sorry, I'm not a specialist in bridge housing world. So can you explain a little bit about how you transition a bridge housing unit to a permanent supportive housing unit? And do you do that with vouchers? And do you have vouchers today?
Correct. So bridge doesn't include a lease or voucher. And so that will be funded for the first 2 to 3 years through the transformational homelessness response grant program. And then, yes, we will be applying for vouchers for years 3 onward. So it'll be supported through the PSH will be traditional vouchers and tenant support services.
Okay. And so Rocky Mountain Communities, I know they have experience through Arroyo with permanent supportive housing, but I believe the homeless shelter component and units are managed by Dolores Project.
Correct.
Right? So yours is more of it's almost an in-between between permanent supportive housing and the shelter. Does Rocky Mountain have that specific experience in managing that?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question about the bridge housing. And really the bridge housing won't take the traditional management, the PSH. So we'll be able to manage that because there's no leases involved, and it's a short-term housing for folks that already have permanent housing identified, and it's a real stabilization period. So the management component really kicks in once we convert it to PSH.
Okay, so they're not going to manage until it's converted to PSH. Before then, you'll have more services, operational management.
Exactly. It does manage more of a transitional housing, again, because we don't have to manage leasing.
And Recovery Works would handle that.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, with
All right.
comprehensive services. And then we have other partners, Stride Community Health and Jefferson Center for mental health. And it's kind of a whole package while they're there.
You need the whole package, absolutely. Okay, thanks for answering those questions. Any other questions from the board? Okay, thanks, James.
Thank you.
Next up is the Delta Shelter, and presenting is Olivia Cook.
Yeah, hi. I'm pleased to introduce Elise Ackelman Castleberry and Megan Robinson, both of the City of Delta, to talk about their shelter.
Good afternoon. I am Elise Castleberry, City Manager for the City of Delta. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you today. I wanted to start a little bit and talk very quickly about our process the last couple of years. In 2020, when shelters were reduced down to 50% capacity. Our cold weather shelter really found itself in a very challenging situation, and we were meeting to discuss things to do and sat there around a table with a handful of other interested parties, and everyone kept saying, someone needs to. And as we sat around looking at the table, it became very clear very quickly that we didn't have a someone. There was not an entity or organization in Delta that was ready or prepared to really begin addressing the needs of our unhoused community comprehensively. And so the city of Delta decided at that time that we needed to become the someone that was sitting at the table and work to develop a more comprehensive strategy and develop a better plan forward, because the things that we were doing as a community to address the needs of this population were clearly inadequate. So with that, we started by hiring an unhoused coordinator. We hired that position in December of 2021. And that individual was charged with, first and foremost, really helping us get a better idea of who was homeless in our community, what their needs were, and then ultimately help us develop a strategy. We spent the last year and a half working on that strategy and have come up with a 3-tiered approach that we are actively working to implement. Starting with prevention, we've established a crisis prevention unit and street outreach program. We are using our ARPA funding to get that started. We have a sister grant associated with this request that will help us continue that work and expand on it. We are also actively pursuing permanent supportive housing and are working with Bo Simone to explore what a project in Delta could look like. And then the third component is really to address the immediate needs of our existing homeless population. We lack year-round shelter. We do not have a location for extreme weather events, whether that be freezing temperatures in the wintertime or heat waves in the summertime. And it can get very, very hot here in Delta in the summertime, that our unhoused population has a safe place to be. So this application in front of you today is really designed to address that third tier of our approach that we are working towards implementing. The city of Delta is intending to own and operate this facility. We have extensive background and experience in construction projects, whether that be facilities, roads, etc. So our ability to see this project through, we're very confident we can do that. Operating a shelter is definitely new to us, but we're in the process of growing our capacity and our knowledge base through that crisis prevention unit that we have established. I know one of the concerns that was raised in our application is our capital stack. We are a small rural community with very limited resources. I think that we are all still surprised that the needs of the unhoused community have found their way to our community here. And so working to come up with the resources necessary to adequately address the needs of this community is certainly a challenge for us. And we're very thankful that these programs are being established. We're excited about Prop 123. We intend to fully opt into that and participate so that we can work to make sure we have the resources now and into the future to continue to address the needs of our unhoused population. With that, we will be acquiring and rehabilitating a building that used to serve as a work release program building. So it is actually very well laid out to serve as an emergency shelter. We will also operate a daytime warming and cooling center as well as a resource center out of the facility. It does have some rehabilitation needs, but they're relatively limited in scope, with a restroom remodel being the largest component of the rehabilitation of the building, new paint, new flooring, some things like that to make it a nicer and clean facility, but most of the rehabilitation itself is in the restroom facilities. Happy to answer any questions you might have about Delta, our programs, or this project.
Thank you, Elise. Any questions from the board? Rick?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Greetings, Elise. Rick Garcia, Delta Executive Director. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Rick.
Just quickly, in the project budget, there's a CDPHE grant pending. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, so in our initial assessment of the building, we did find some asbestos flooring that we would prefer to remediate and remove it rather than, we could cover it and move on, but we'd prefer to get it out of there. We have spoken with the Brownfields program. This is certainly an eligible project for that. They really want us to have site control before we make that application, and the timing of this application and the timing of that application. We want to know that we can move the project forward. So as soon as we know whether or not we receive funding on this, we will get that application, and they take those on a revolving basis.
Right. Are you feeling pretty good about getting that award from?
Yeah, I do. And I think alternatively, if the city needs to tap into our citywide fund to come up with, it's not a huge cost estimate to deal with. We would certainly do that. We prefer not to. Again, we're trying to prioritize the needs of a lot of things, but hopefully we could be successful with that grant. It's definitely a clear cut eligible expense and eligible project for that program.
Well, thank you. And congratulations to you and your community for working on getting this project this far. That's really great to see.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would echo that. Thank you for being that someone. Question I have is tied to construction costs. Looks like you had an initial cost estimate that was provided by Stryker Construction. Does Stryker do construction in Delta? Are they familiar with this area? How confident do you feel in their estimate? And have they taken into account labor?
Yeah, so Stryker is actively working on projects in Delta. In fact, we just completed one project with them as our contractor. We are just about to kick off a second project with them to rehabilitate a historic building into our new community safety center. So they're very familiar with the construction cost market, et cetera. We will, by our own procurement process requirements, go out to competitive bid. Again, the remodel of the bathrooms is the major component that requires, will require building permits and architectural design. The rest of the work is really flooring replacement and paint and cleanup of the building.
Great. Thank you for that. Any other questions from the board? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to the voting application stage. Can I ask, please, can you go back to the original agenda so I can see all of the deal names on the screen? We're going to do a few different rounds here. Why don't we start out with the Irving at Mile High, which I'll be recusing myself from. I'd like to ask for a motion of approval for the Irving at Mile High.
So moved. This is Candace.
Thanks, Candace.
I second. James Martinez.
Thank you, James. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. So just to confirm here, we need 5 votes. Candace has 2. Nancy has 1 and James has another. I thought we had one other board member on the line here.
How can we vote Sam's if you have the proxy, Anthea?
Can I vote Sam's proxy if I'm recusing myself?
That's my question.
All these big questions we always have, right? Sam votes yes. I would vote yes.
Okay.
Let me see if I can text Sam while we are here and have you use his proxy. Someone else get his proxy. I don't have Sam here.
Do you have to recuse yourself from all of these projects?
Nope, just the Irving at Mile High.
Okay.
But I don't have, well, look,
4,
thank you.
we have a quorum with 4 per the rules.
Right.
Okay, excellent. I thought we determined via email that we needed 5 to be majority. But if we have a quorum of 4, then great. Okay, Next up, let's go ahead and pull up Bridge House Ready to Work. The request for motion for approval.
So moved. It's Candace.
Candace,
I second, James.
thanks, James. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I abstain.
Nancy abstains. Candace has Ladon's proxy and I have Sam's proxy. Okay. Excellent. Next up, Response Shelter, Fort Collins Rescue Mission, Mountain View Flats, and Delta Shelter. What a great batch of projects we have. So if I could please get a motion for approval.
I'll move approval.
Thank you, Nancy.
I second, James.
Thank you, James. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Great. Well, thank you all for your attendance today and for taking the time to present these wonderful projects to us. We look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Good.
Congratulations.
Great projects.
Great
Great.
projects. Congratulations all.
Thank you.